The transport ship Whisper's edge cut through the void like a blade through silk, its hull absorbing starlight rather than reflecting it. Within its cramped cockpit, Zeravex checked her equipment. One final time, violet fingers dancing across holographic displays with practiced precision. The breathing apparatus fits snugly against her angular features, designed to filter the thick, oxygen-heavy atmosphere of the human world below. Target acquired. She murmured into her comm unit, watching the small research station grow larger. In her viewport, the human outpost on Kepler 438b looked impossibly fragile against the planet's crimson landscape. A collection of white domes connected by transparent corridors like pearls on a string. Confirmed, Shadow 7, came the cold response from her handler. Remember, total elimination. No survivors, no witnesses. The humans must believe it was a system malfunction. Zera's jaw tightened. After 15 years as an Etherian assassin, she'd never questioned an order. Her people had engineered her from birth for this purpose. Enhanced reflexes, toxin immunity, the ability to mimic other species' biological signatures. She was the perfect weapon against humanity's relentless expansion across the galaxy. Understood. Control, she replied, though something twisted uncomfortably in her chest. Beginning descent. The landing was flawless, her ship touching down in a rocky canyon 3 kilometers from the station. Zera emerged into the alien world, her adaptive suit shifting from matte black to match the rust-colored stone around her. The air tasted of iron and growing things, strange after the recycled atmosphere of her ship. Through her scope, she surveyed the research facility. 17 humans according to intelligence reports. All civilians studying the planet's unique ecosystem. Easy targets. She could have them all dead within an hour, their deaths looking like accidents or equipment failures. She approached through a service tunnel, her enhanced hearing picking up the steady hum of air, recyclers and the distant murmur of human voices. The maintenance shaft led directly into the station's botanical section, where massive transparent domes housed thousands of alien plants. It would be simple to introduce a toxin into the air system. Here, something that would mimic a natural spore release. Zera had just begun working on the environmental controls when she heard humming. The sound froze her in place. Not the mechanical hum of machinery, but something organic, musical, a human voice. Warm and unguarded, drifting through the dome's corridors. She'd studied human vocal patterns, of course, but she'd never heard one like this completely without fear or aggression, as if the singer felt utterly safe in their enclosed world. Following the sound despite every instinct screaming warnings, Zera found herself peering around a corner at a sight that defied all her preconceptions. A human male knelt among a collection of towering, crystalline plants, their surfaces catching and refracting the dome's artificial sunlight. He was tall even by human standards, with brown hair that caught golden highlights under the grow lamps, and hands that moved with surprising gentleness as he tended to the alien flora. Easy there. Beautiful, he murmured to one of the plants, his voice carrying that same warm quality she'd heard in his humming. I know the soil mixture is different, but trust me on this one. Zera blinked in confusion. He was talking to the plants as if they could understand him, as if they were companions rather than specimens. Her briefings had described humans as coldly analytical, exploitative in their approach to alien life. This man's behavior made no sense. That she watched, transfixed, as he carefully adjusted the plant's support structure, then moved to check the soil pH of another specimen. His movements were economical but never rushed, and his face showed a kind of focused contentment that Zera had never seen before. When one of the plants, a spiraling thing, covered in iridescent scales, began to droop, genuine concern crossed his features. Marcus, you in there? A female voice called from deeper in the dome. Over here. Elena, the man replied, not looking up from the drooping plant. I think we might have a calcium deficiency in Sector 7. Dawn on Kepler 438b painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, the binary stars creating double shadows across the research station's transparent corridors. Zera had spent the night hidden in the maintenance tunnels, her enhanced physiology requiring little rest, but her mind churning with questions that had no easy answers. She'd watched the station's routine unfold through security feeds tapped into her portable scanner. The 17 humans moved through their daily lives with a casual intimacy that spoke of months, perhaps years, working together in isolation. They shared meals, laughed at private jokes, showed concern when someone seemed tired or stressed. It was nothing like the cold efficiency her briefings had described. And then there was Marcus. Through the feeds, she'd observed him starting his day before the others, moving through the botanical domes with steaming mug in hand, greeting each section of plants like old friends. His routine was meditative, purposeful, and entirely at odds with everything she'd been taught about human nature. Shadow 7 report. The harsh voice of her handler crackled through her comm unit, making her flinch in the confined space of the tunnel. Day 2 of reconnaissance, Zara replied carefully. Targets maintaining normal patterns, proceeding with Phase 2. Phase 2 should have been completed yesterday, came the cold response. Control is displeased with delays. Zara's jaw tightened. Among the Etherians, displeasure from Control meant more than professional criticism. It meant questioning her loyalty, her genetic programming, her very right to exist. Environmental complications, she lied smoothly. The station's security is more sophisticated than anticipated. A pause. Then, complete the mission within 12 hours, Shadow 7. Further delays will require intervention. The connection cut, leaving Zara alone with the implications. Intervention meant they'd send Nyx to Ron, her former training partner and current Control liaison. Nyx had never failed a mission, never questioned an order, never shown the slightest hesitation in eliminating any target designated as a threat to Etherian space. Nyx would complete the mission and then eliminate Zara for her failure. 12 hours. Zara stared at the scanner's display, watching Marcus tend to a section of crystalline fungi that seemed to respond to his touch. With subtle color changes, she could end this now, introduce toxins into the air system, and be back in space before the first body was discovered. It would be simple, clean, efficient. Her finger hovered over the toxin dispenser's activation sequence through the security feed. She watched Marcus laugh at something one of the fungi seemed to do in response to his ministrations. The sound, even filtered through electronic equipment, carried that same warmth she'd heard yesterday. He looked genuinely delighted, as if these alien organisms were personal friends, rather than research subjects. Damn, she whispered, deactivating the dispenser. Instead of completing her mission, Zara found herself moving through the maintenance tunnels toward the botanical section. She told herself it was reconnaissance, gathering more intelligence before acting. But as she positioned herself in a new hiding spot closer this time, near enough to hear actual conversations rather than just observe, she knew she was lying to herself. Morning, gorgeous. Marcus's voice drifted through the dome's structure as he addressed a towering spiral plant, whose bioluminescent patterns pulsed in slow, hypnotic rhythms. How are we feeling today? He moved around the plant's base, checking soil moisture and nutrient levels with the same careful attention a medic might show a patient. The plant's glow shifted from deep blue to warmer purple shades, and Marcus nodded with satisfaction. That's what I like to see. Elena's new mineral mixture is working wonders for you. Talking to yourself again, Marcus, Elena's voice came from the dome's entrance, carrying fond exasperation. Talking to Spyro, Marcus corrected without embarrassment. She's very responsive to conversation. Yesterday she actually synchronized her light patterns to my voice modulations. Elena approached, carrying a toolkit and wearing the expression of someone accustomed to humoring a colleague's eccentricities. Plants don't have consciousness, Marcus. Those patterns are just biological responses to environmental stimuli. Maybe, Marcus admitted, but his tone suggested he didn't entirely believe it. Or maybe consciousness isn't as limited as we assume. Look at her response patterns, they're too complex for simple stimulus-response reactions. As if to prove his point, the spiral plant's luminescence shifted through a complex sequence of colors, starting with deep violet and progressing through the spectrum to warm gold. The display was undeniably beautiful, almost artistic in its progression. Elena paused in her equipment check, studying the light show with obvious interest. Okay, that's actually pretty sophisticated, but correlation doesn't imply communication. Marcus finished with a grin. I know. But tell me that pattern doesn't look intentional. Zara found herself leaning forward, caught up in their debate despite herself. Among her own people, such discussions would be dismissed as weakness, anthropomorphization of lesser life forms. But Marcus and Elena spoke as equals, each perspective valued even when they disagreed. You know what your problem is, Elena said, settling down beside Marcus to check the plant's root system. You see personalities in everything. Remember when you insisted the carbon scrubbers were temperamental? They were temperamental, Marcus protested. Unit 7 always ran hot when the humidity spiked, but only on Tuesdays. That's not random malfunction. That's learned behavior. That's anthropomorphism. That's pattern recognition. Their banter continued as they worked, a comfortable rhythm that spoke of long friendship and mutual respect. But Zara's attention was drawn to something else entirely. Elena had taken readings from several plants, and her expression was growing increasingly concerned. Marcus, she said quietly, her tone shifting from playful to serious, we have a problem. He looked up from the spiral plant, immediately alert. What kind of problem? The Calarian section. Toxin levels are spiking across multiple specimens. Elena's scanner beeped insistently as she moved between plants. This isn't natural, something's contaminating their soil matrix. Zara's blood ran cold. The Calarian spirals were exactly where she'd been yesterday, where she'd begun introducing trace amounts of synthetic toxins before being distracted by Marcus's presence. She'd stopped the process, but apparently not before some contamination had occurred. How bad is it? Marcus was already moving toward the affected section, his casual demeanor replaced by focused urgency. Double quotes bad. If we don't neutralize the contamination, in the next few hours, we'll lose the entire collection. Elena's voice carried barely controlled panic. 15 years of research. Specimens we can never replace. Marcus knelt beside the nearest Calarian spiral, his hands moving gently over its drooping fronds. The plant's usual iridescent shimmer had dulled to sickly gray-green, and its spiral structure was beginning to collapse. Around it, other specimens showed similar signs of distress. Can we isolate the contamination source? He asked, his voice steady despite the crisis. I'm trying, but the readings are inconsistent. Whatever caused this, it's unlike anything in our databases. Elena's scanner continued its urgent beeping as she took sample after sample. Marcus, some of these plants, they're the last of their species. If they die, they won't die. Marcus said firmly, though Zara could hear the fear beneath his determination. We'll figure this out. Watching their desperate efforts to save the dying plants, Zara felt something twist in her chest. These weren't just research specimens to them, they were living beings whose welfare mattered. Marcus moved between the spirals with the urgency of someone trying to save friends, not preserve scientific assets. Elena's scanner let out a particularly sharp alarm as she approached the plant cluster nearest to Zara's hiding place. The contamination is strongest here, she reported, almost like it originated from this location. Environmental breach, Marcus suggested, examining the dome's structure above the affected area. Maybe something came through the air recycling system, maybe, but Elena frowned at her readings. Marcus, this toxin signature, it's not random contamination. The molecular structure is too complex, too specifically targeted at Calarian biology. The implications hung in the air between them. Zara saw the moment understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes, the shift from confusion to grim realization. Sabotage, he said quietly. But who would? Elena began, then stopped. The Etherians. Intelligence warned us they might try to prevent human expansion into this sector. Zara's enhanced hearing picked up the acceleration in both humans' heart rates, the subtle chemical changes that indicated fear and stress. But alongside the fear, she detected something else, determination. Neither of them was running. Neither was calling for evacuation. Instead, they were doubling their efforts. To save the dying plants, we need to synthesize a neutralizing agent, Marcus said, already moving toward the lab equipment. If we can identify the specific toxin structure, we might be able to counteract it. That could take hours, Elena protested. These plants might not have hours. Then we better work fast. Zara watched them dive into frantic research, their earlier casual banter replaced by intense focus. Elena ran chemical analysis while Marcus cross-referenced biological databases, both worky. The maintenance tunnels beneath the research station had become Zara's world, a maze of conduits and access shafts where she could move unseen. While wrestling with impossible choices, through her scanner, she tracked the Whisper's edge as it approached Kepler 438b Nix's ship, sleek and deadly, carrying death for everyone she'd begun to care about. For hours until arrival, for hours to find a way to protect 17 humans from the most efficient killer the Etherean military had ever produced. Marcus, you need to see this. Elena's voice crackled through the station's comm system, pulling Zara's attention back to the security feeds. On her screen, she watched the two humans hunched over a data terminal in the main lab, their faces illuminated by scrolling streams of information. What is it? Marcus asked, setting down the soil sample he'd been analyzing. Remember that transmission we received, the one with the antidote data? Elena's fingers danced across the interface, highlighting specific portions of code. I've been analyzing the signal structure. Marcus, this didn't come from any human source. Zara's breath caught. She'd been careful to disguise the transmission's origin, but Elena was clearly more skilled than anticipated. What do you mean? Marcus moved closer to the screen, studying the data patterns with growing curiosity rather than alarm. The encryption methods, the data compression algorithms, they're completely foreign, sophisticated beyond anything in our databases, but fundamentally different from human programming languages. Elena pulled up a comparative analysis. This came from an alien source. Someone non-human sent us the cure. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. The Ethereans, he said finally. That's the logical assumption. But Marcus, Elena paused, her expression troubled. If the Ethereans sabotaged our plants, why would they then send us the cure? It doesn't make tactical sense. Through the security feed, Zara watched Marcus's face as understanding dawned. His expression shifted from confusion to something deeper, more complex, a recognition that carried surprising warmth rather than fear. Maybe, he said slowly, because whoever sent it changed their mind. The words hit Zara like a physical blow. Somehow, impossibly, Marcus had intuited the truth. Not the details, but the emotional reality behind her actions. Someone had started to hurt his plants, then chosen to save them instead. You think one of them developed a conscience? Elena's tone suggested she found the idea unlikely. I think, Marcus replied, his voice carrying a gentleness that made Zara's chest ache, that maybe we don't understand them as well as we thought we did. Elena shook her head. Marcus, you can't project human motivations onto an alien species. They're probably just playing some kind of psychological warfare game. Maybe. Or maybe they're more like us than either side wants to admit. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the botanical section. Marcus immediately headed for the domes, Elena close behind, leaving Zara staring at her scanner in amazement. Marcus's capacity for empathy extended even to enemies he'd never met, based on nothing more than a single act of unexpected kindness. Following them through the security feeds, Zara watched as they investigated the alarm's sources section of Terran plants that had been struggling to adapt to Kepler 438b's unique soil conditions. The specimens were showing signs of stress, their leaves wilting despite careful environmental controls. It's the mineral balance again, Marcus muttered, taking readings from the affected plants. They need trace elements that just don't exist naturally on this planet. Can we synthesize what they need? Elena asked, already running calculations on her handheld scanner. Not easily. The specific combination they require, Marcus trailed off, studying one of the drooping plants with obvious concern. These are from Earth's last remaining wilderness preserve. If we lose them here, they're extinct forever. Zara found herself leaning forward, caught up in their crisis despite the larger dangers approaching. She'd studied the mission files extensively. These plants were among the last genetic representatives of Earth's pre-industrial ecosystem, preserved only in carefully maintained collections like this one. Wait, Elena said suddenly, checking her readings again. These mineral signatures, they're similar to what we found in the antidote data. Whoever sent that information might know how to help these plants too. Marcus looked up from the wilting specimens, hope flickering in his expression. "Can we send a query, ask for help? It's worth trying, if they're monitoring our communications." Elena moved to the nearest communication terminal, her fingers hesitating over the controls. "This feels crazy, Marcus. We're basically asking potential enemies for gardening advice." "Maybe that's exactly what we need to do," Marcus replied. "Maybe if we start treating them as potential friends instead of certain enemies, we'll get different results." Watching them debate, Zara felt the weight of decision settling on her shoulders. They were reaching out, trying to bridge the gap between species through shared concern for plant life. It was exactly the kind of gesture that could change everything if she responded, but responding would expose her presence, reveal her mission, and potentially doom everyone she was trying to protect. Elena activated the transmission array, sending a carefully worded query into space to whoever provided the Calarian antidote. "We have other plants in distress and would welcome further assistance. We believe in the value of preserving all life, regardless of its origin." The message was simple, humble, and completely at odds with everything Zara had been taught about human arrogance and aggression. She stared at the transmission log, knowing that Nyx would intercept it within minutes, knowing it would confirm human Etherian contact and justify immediate elimination of all witnesses. She had to respond, not just to help the plants, but to protect Marcus and Elena from their own generosity. This time, she didn't bother disguising the transmission source. If she was going to betray everything she'd been created to be, she might as well do it completely. Her fingers flew over her equipment's interface, compiling detailed mineral composition data for the struggling Terran plants, along with synthesis protocols that would work with the station's equipment. But she also included something else, a warning, coded in mathematical progressions that any competent analyst would recognize as intentional. "Communication. Danger approaches in 3.7 hours. Suggest deep system protocols. Trust the garden keeper." The transmission sent. Zara found herself holding her breath as she watched Marcus and Elena receive the new data. Elena's equipment immediately began processing the mineral synthesis information, while Marcus studied the mathematical warning. "Elena," he said quietly, his voice carrying a tension that hadn't been there moments before. "Look at this sequence. These numbers, they're not random." Elena glanced over, her expression shifting as she recognized the pattern. "It's a countdown. Someone's warning us about something happening in," she calculated quickly, "less than 4 hours. And this phrase, 'trust the garden keeper,' that's specific, personal." Marcus looked around the botanical dome, his gaze lingering on the plants they'd saved, the specimens they were trying to help. "Someone's been watching us. Someone who knows what we do here." The realization should have frightened them. Instead, Zara watched something else cross Marcus's face: understanding, acceptance, even a strange kind of gratitude. "Deep system protocols," Elena read from the warning. "That means shutting down all external sensors, going into emergency lockdown. Standard procedure for when someone's coming to kill us." Marcus finished quietly. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the gentle hum of environmental systems and the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. The beauty of their garden stood in stark contrast to the danger approaching from space. "We should alert the rest of the team," Elena said finally. "Initiate evacuation procedures." "With what ships?" Marcus asked gently. "We have one transport shuttle, Elena. It holds 8 people. There are 17 of us." The mathematics of survival settled between them like a weight. Even if they believed the warning, even if they acted immediately, not everyone could escape. "Then we go into lockdown," Elena decided. "Deep system protocols, emergency shielding." "Wait it out. That might not be enough." Marcus moved through the garden, his hands trailing over the plants they'd worked so hard to save. "If someone's coming with serious firepower, the garden," Elena said suddenly. "Marcus, what if we hide in the garden?" "What do you mean?" Elena's excitement grew as she explained. "The botanical domes have independent life support, redundant shielding, and they're the most structurally sound part of the station. If we're going into lockdown anyway, why not do it somewhere beautiful?" Through her scanner, Zara watched Marcus consider the proposal. His gaze moved across the plants surrounding them, the recovered Calarian spirals, the struggling Terran specimens. the dozens of other species they'd nurtured and protected. We'd be trapped, he pointed out. We're trapped anyway, at least here. We'd be surrounded by life instead of metal walls. The simple logic of it seemed to appeal to Marcus. More than that, Zara realized he found comfort in the idea of facing dangers surrounded by the plants he'd dedicated his life to protecting. Okay, he said finally. We'll gather everyone in the main botanical dome. Emergency protocols. The botanical dome had become a war room disguised as paradise. 17 humans and one Etherean assassin gathered in a circle among the towering plants, their voices hushed as they planned for survival. Above them, bioluminescent spirals cast, shifting patterns of light across faces tight with fear and determination. Her ship will approach from the solar north, Zara explained, her fingers tracing trajectories on Elena's tablet. Nyx prefers stealth insertion through the maintenance, bay minimal signatures, maximum surprise. She'll expect to find me in position to assist. Marcus sat closest to her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his human metabolism. His presence should have been distracting, but instead it anchored her, gave her strength to betray everything she'd ever known. How many? Asked Dr. Petrov, the station's senior researcher, his weathered face grave. Just one. Zara replied. Nyx doesn't need backup. She's exceptional. One person against 17 seems like good odds, offered Yuki, the communications specialist. Though her voice carried more hope than conviction, Zara shook her head. You don't understand. Nyx has never failed a mission, never shown mercy, never hesitated. She paused, meeting each of their gazes in turn. She's everything I was created to be, without the flaws that brought me here. Flaws? Marcus's voice carried gentle challenge. Is that what you call choosing to save life instead of destroy it? Before Zara could answer, Elena's scanner chirped with an incoming signal. The communication array had detected a new contact entering the system small, fast, and heading directly for Kepler 438b. 90 minutes, Zara said, checking the trajectory data. Her enhanced hearing picked up the subtle acceleration in human heart rates around the circle. Fear, but also resolve. These people weren't running. Okay, Marcus said, rising to address the group. We have an hour and a half to prepare. The dome's emergency protocols will give us some protection, but we need to assume this Nyx will find a way inside. What about weapons? Asked Jake, the station's security officer, though his training was more about equipment maintenance than combat. Zara almost laughed at the suggestion. Nothing you have will stop her. Nyx's reflexes are enhanced beyond human capability. Her skin can deflect most projectile weapons, and she has access to toxins that can kill through skin contact. The circle fell silent as the reality of their situation settled over them. They were researchers, botanists, engineers, not soldiers. Against a perfect killing machine, their odds were effectively zero. There has to be something, Elena insisted. Some weakness, some vulnerability. There is, Zara said quietly. Me. Marcus turned toward her, understanding and concern warring in his expression. What do you mean? Nyx and I train together. We know each other's patterns, techniques, limitations. Zara's hands clenched unconsciously. If I can engage her directly, keep her focused on me instead of the mission, that's suicide. Marcus said flatly, it's the only chance you have. No. The word came out sharper than Marcus intended, surprising everyone including himself. We're not sacrificing anyone. There has to be another way. Zara felt something warm and painful bloom in her chest at his vehemence. No one in her entire life had ever protested the idea of her death. Among the Ethereans, individual survival was always secondary to mission completion. Marcus is right, Elena said suddenly. We're thinking about this wrong. We're assuming we have to fight her. You want to negotiate with an assassin? Dr. Petrov asked skeptically. I want to change the parameters of the encounter. Elena moved to the dome's central control console, her fingers flying over the interface. Zara, you said she expects to find you in position to assist. What if you are? Zara frowned, not following Elena's logic. I don't understand. What if we fake the mission completion? Make it look like you succeeded, that everyone's already dead. Elena's excitement grew as she outlined the plan. The station has emergency simulation protocols. We can mimic system failures, life support collapse, even generate false biosignatures. Marcus caught on immediately. Create the appearance of a successful assassination without actually killing anyone. Exactly. We hide in the deep storage areas while the station's computer systems tell a story of mission completion. When Nyx arrives, she finds what appears to be a dead facility. It could work, Zara admitted slowly. Nyx is thorough, but if the evidence points to successful completion, she might not investigate further. Might not? Jake pressed. Zara met his gaze honestly. Nyx doesn't leave things to chance. She'll want to verify, confirm the kills personally. Then, we better make the deception convincing, Marcus said, rising from his seat. How long do we have to set this up? Elena checked her chronometer. 73 minutes. The Nyx are passed in controlled chaos as 17 humans and one conflicted assassin worked to fake their own deaths. Elena and her engineering team manipulated environmental systems to simulate catastrophic failure. Air scrubbers offline, life support failing, temperature dropping to lethal levels. Dr. Petrov and the research staff prepared false biosignature generators that would register as human remains to Etherian scanners. Zara found herself working alongside Marcus to create physical evidence of the supposed disaster. They scattered debris, damaged equipment, and staged areas to look like the aftermath of system-wide failure. This is insane, Marcus muttered as they overturned a lab table for the third time. Trying to achieve the right level of devastation. Insane enough to work, Zara replied. Adjusting the position of scattered data tablets. Nyx expects efficiency, not creativity. Is that why you're helping us? Because we're creative? The question caught Zara off guard. She paused in her staging efforts, really considering Marcus's words. I'm helping you because you showed me that my assumptions about humans were wrong. Which assumptions? That you were destroyers, conquerors, that you consumed everything in your path without regard for other life. She gestured toward the botanical dome around them. But you've dedicated your lives to preserving life, protecting species that aren't even your own. Marcus nodded slowly. And you're risking everything to protect us. What does that say about Etherian assumptions? Before Zara could answer, Elena's voice crackled over the comm system. 40 minutes to contact. Everyone needs to be in position. The final preparations were rushed but thorough. The humans gathered in a deep storage area beneath the station's main structure, is space designed to protect valuable equipment that would also shield them from most scanning techniques. Zara remained in the botanical dome, surrounded by the plants she'd helped save, preparing to play the role of dutiful assassin. Zara. Marcus's voice made her turn as the others disappeared into their hiding place. He stood in the dome's entrance, hesitation written across his features. You should go, she said gently. Nyx will be here soon. I know, He stepped closer, his hands working nervously at his sides. I wanted to say thank you, for the plants, for the warning, for everything. Don't thank me yet. We don't know if this will work. It'll work, Marcus said with surprising conviction. And when it does, when this is over, I'd like to show you more of the garden, the sections you haven't seen yet. The simple statement carried deeper meaning, an invitation to a future neither of them was certain they'd survive to see. Zara felt that warm bloom in her chest again, stronger this time. I'd like that, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus smiled, that same gentle expression that had first captured her attention, and disappeared into the station's depths. Zara was alone with the plants and the weight of her deception. 20 minutes later, Nyx Tehran arrived. Zara felt her former partner's presence before the scanners detected the ship. Nyx moved through space with the same deadly grace she brought to everything else, her approach vector perfectly calculated for stealth and efficiency. The Whisper's edge docked with the station's maintenance bay exactly as Zara had predicted. Through the security feeds, she watched Nyx emerge from her ship, tall, elegant, and utterly lethal, where Zara's features held subtle curves and expressions. Nyx's face was all sharp angles and controlled precision. She moved like liquid death through the station's corridors. Shadow 7. Nyx's voice came through the comm system, cold and perfectly modulated. Report. Mission complete, Zara replied, forcing her voice into the same emotionless tone. All targets eliminated. Station systems compromised to simulate mechanical failure. Confirmed. I'm reading 17 terminations. System-wide failures consistent with your report. Nix's scanner readings would show exactly what Elena had programmed them to show. Extraction in 10 minutes. Zara allowed herself a moment of hope. The deception was working. Nix would conduct a brief verification sweep, confirm the mission's success, and they would both return to Etherian space. The humans would wait a safe interval, then report the system failure that had temporarily knocked out their communications. Everyone would survive. Shadow 7. Nix's voice carried a different quality now, something that made Zara's enhanced senses scream warnings. Join me in the botanical section. There are irregularities that require explanation. Zara's blood turned to ice. Irregularities meant Nix had found something, noticed some detail that didn't fit the cover story. She had no choice but to respond, to maintain her cover for as long as possible. Blood pooled beneath the fallen figure among the scattered petals of alien flowers. In the botanical dome's soft bioluminescent glow, Zara knelt beside Nix's still form, her own wounds seeping violet fluid onto the torn earth where Marcus's precious plants had been crushed in their final battle. The silence stretched like a held breath until footsteps echoed through the dome's entrance. Marcus appeared first, followed by Elena and the others, their faces etched with concern and disbelief as they took in the scene of devastation. Zara. Marcus breathed, rushing to her side. His hands hovered uncertainly over her injuries, wanting to help but unsure how alien physiology might respond to human touch. I'm alive, she managed, though the biotoxin from Nix's blade was spreading through her system like liquid fire. The mission is terminated. Elena immediately began scanning both Etherians with her medical equipment while the others spread out to assess the damage to their precious garden. Dr. Petrov knelt beside Nix's body, his physician's training overriding species differences as he checked for vital signs. She's alive, he announced, unconscious, severe trauma, but stable. Marcus looked between the two aliens, one who had tried to save them, one who had come to kill them, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible hours earlier. Get them both to the medical bay, he ordered. We treat their injuries first, sort out everything else later. Marcus, Jake protested. She came here to murder us all. And she failed, Marcus replied firmly, helping support Zara as they moved through the ruined garden. Right now, they're both patients who need medical attention. The next several hours blurred together in a haze of medical procedures and careful diplomacy. Elena worked alongside Dr. Petrov to treat both aliens' injuries, their human medical knowledge proving surprisingly adaptable to Etherian physiology. Zara drifted in and out of consciousness, her enhanced healing factors warring with the biotoxin in her system. When she finally awoke fully, she found Marcus sitting beside her bed. In the medical bay, his clothes still stained with violet blood and crushed plant matter. How long? She asked, her voice rough but stronger than before. 18 hours, Marcus replied, offering her a cup of water that had been specially treated to match Etherian mineral requirements. Elena figured out how to neutralize the toxin. You're going to be fine. Zara accepted the water gratefully, noting how Marcus had taken the time to understand her physiological needs. And Nix, recovering, under guard, but alive. Marcus's expression grew thoughtful. She's been asking about you. Seems confused about what happened. Before Zara could respond, Elena entered the medical bay carrying a data tablet and wearing an expression of barely contained excitement. You need to see this, she announced, settling into a chair beside the bed. While you were unconscious, we received a transmission from the Etherian leadership. Apparently, someone named Elder Thane wants to establish formal diplomatic contact. Zara struggled to sit up, disbelief and hope warring in her chest. That's impossible. The Etherian Council would never what? Elena interrupted. Gently, seek peaceful coexistence. Consider alternatives to expansion through conquest. It's not that simple, Zara protested, though her certainty was wavering. Our cultures, our entire worldviews are incompatible. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes bright with possibility. What if they're not? What if the incompatibility is just assumptions on both sides? Elena activated her tablet, displaying a complex star chart. The transmission included coordinates for a neutral meeting point. Elder Thane specifically requested that you attend. Zara, both as a representative of their people and as someone who has experienced human culture firsthand, the implications were staggering. Zara had expected to be declared a traitor, hunted by her own kind for the rest of her life. Instead, the Etherian leadership was treating her actions as a bridge rather than a betrayal. There's more, Elena continued, her excitement growing. They're proposing a cultural exchange program. Scientists, researchers, artists, people whose primary goal is understanding rather than conquest. And they want to start here, Marcus added. On Kepler 438b, neutral ground where both species can learn about each other through shared work. Zara stared at them both, struggling to process the radical shift her actions had triggered. You would trust them after Nyx tried to kill you. All we'd trust you, Marcus said simply, and you're one of them. If one Etherian can choose compassion over violence, maybe others can too. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the adjacent room where Nyx was being held. Through the medical bay's transparency, they could see the other assassin sitting up in her bed, arguing with Jake, who was attempting to maintain security protocols. I need to speak with her, Zara said, swinging her legs over the side of her bed. Despite Elena's protests about rest and recovery, Marcus accompanied her to Nyx's room, standing close enough to offer support if needed. The other Etherian looked up as they entered, her pale eyes moving between Zara and the human with calculating intensity. You're contaminated, Nyx said without preamble. Whatever they did to you, it's corrupted your basic programming. They didn't do anything to me, Zara replied, settling into a chair across from her former partner. They showed me who I could choose to be. Choice. Nyx spoke the word like a curse. We don't have choices, Zara. We have purposes, missions, genetic imperatives. Maybe that's the problem, Zara said gently. Maybe we've been so focused on what we were created to do that we never considered what we might want to do. Nyx's expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty. The humans are still the enemy. Our leaders won't change millennia of policy because one operative developed irrational attachments. They already have, Marcus interjected, showing Nyx the diplomatic transmission on Elena's tablet. Elder Thane specifically mentioned wanting to understand what happened here. What changed your partner's perspective so dramatically? This is deception, Nyx said, but her voice lacked conviction. Psychological manipulation designed to lower our defenses. Zara stood and moved to the room's small window, gazing out at the botanical domes where recovery efforts were already underway. Come with me, she said to Nyx, when you're well enough. Let me show you what they've built here. Why would I want to see human agricultural experiments? Because Zara turned back to face her former partner. They're not just experiments. They're acts of love. 17 people dedicating their lives to preserving beauty and diversity, protecting species that aren't even their own. Over the following days, as both Etherians recovered from their injuries, something unprecedented began to unfold on Kepler 438b. Nyx, initially suspicious and hostile, found herself drawn into conversations with the human researchers. Her analytical mind couldn't dismiss the evidence of genuine scientific collaboration, of knowledge shared freely rather than hoarded for strategic advantage. Dr. Petrov engaged her in discussions about comparative biology, while Elena explained the station's environmental systems with infectious enthusiasm. Even Jake, despite his security concerns, found himself showing Nyx the communication arrays and explaining how the humans maintained contact with dozens of other research stations across human space. But it was in the botanical domes that the real transformation occurred. Marcus had insisted on personally guiding both Etherians through the garden areas, explaining not just the science behind their work but the philosophy. He spoke about each species as individuals, describing their needs and quirks with the same attention he might give to close friends. This is madness, Nyx said as they stood before a thriving grove of Calarian spirals, their bioluminescent patterns creating a symphony of light. In response to Marcus's voice, you invest emotional energy in non-sentient life forms. How do you know they're non-sentient? Marcus asked, gently adjusting the support structure for a young Spyro. Because they don't communicate the way you do. Because their intelligence doesn't match your definitions. Because they lack the neural complexity for consciousness. Nyx replied, though she watched the spiral's light patterns with obvious fascination. Watch this, Marcus said, beginning to hum the same melody Zara had first heard him sing. The spiral's patterns immediately shifted, synchronizing with his rhythm and creating a visual representation of the music. Coincidence, Nyx insisted, but her scanner was taking detailed readings of the plant's responses. Is it? Zara asked, moving to stand beside another Spyro. She began humming a different melody, and the plants around her responded with their own distinct light patterns, while maintaining harmonic resonance with Marcus's tune. They stood together in the garden, human and Etherean, former enemies creating beauty through simple cooperation. While the alien plants painted their voices in living light, it was a moment of perfect synthesis, proof that understanding could bridge any gap if both sides were willing to try. I need to report this to the council, Nyx said finally, her voice tight with emotions she clearly didn't understand. This level of interspecies communication, it changes everything. 3 weeks later, Elder Thane arrived at Kepler 438b aboard a ship that dwarfed the research station, but approached with careful, non-threatening vectors. The Etherean leader was ancient by their species' standards, her skin bearing the deep violet hues